Hello everyone, my name is Quant, and today we're gonna take a look at my Juggernaut Marauder super tanky character that I built for the Ascendancy, obviously, since I am an Ascendancy class right here. As you can see, this character has quite a bit of armor, and that's my main goal when I made this character. I've, at least recently when I play Path of Exile, always felt that physical damage taken is way too high, and armor is something that is way too needed, so to say. You need it way more than you used to, and especially so when you build the physical, melee characters. And even if you have something like Fortify, I still feel like it isn't enough at many times. And I have another problem with Fortify itself, that it's so, you need to have it if you're a melee build. It makes it even worse. So this character I made inspired by all of that, and thought like, hey, I want to make something that is just super incredibly tanky. My entire skill tree is based on just getting as much HP and armor and regen and just being as super tanky as possible. And what can I do to actually deal damage with this build? So I thought about that for a little while, and I came up with the idea that I am actually using Molten Shell to deal damage. This can sound really strange. So before we actually go through anything else, I'm gonna go through the items that makes this possible. Then I'm gonna explain a little more what this actually means for the character itself. So the thing we do have first and foremost is the Molten Shell. Now, if some of you thinks that Molten Shell triggers the more damage you take, it's actually wrong. Molten Shell triggers when you have absorbed an amount of damage, physical damage to be specific, which you can see in the wording right here. As you can see here, this shield breaks after a total of 960 damage prevented. This is physical damage prevented, as you can see in the wording, and also if you block or anything like that, that also counts towards it, as long as you block physical damage, I believe. I don't know if you actually have spell block, if that actually counts into it, but as far as I know, elemental damages is not in this. But what we actually do to trigger this is having a ridiculous amount of armor, which is even more because we are getting quite a bit of endurance charges, one maximum here, and then we get every endurance charge in the tree, and we also obviously have oak to get a grand total of 8 charges. Now the good thing about this is that we use the Skull's Brill to take damage when we use a skill, and that is purely physical damage. So this entire idea is that we activate Molten Shell, then we use Cyclone, and we explode. That's the gist of it. Normally it explodes way faster than that, because, well, first of all, if I stack up my endurance charges, as you can see I have 1 endurance charge here, I'm gonna get more armor. So when I get all 8, I actually have 90% physical damage reduction, which is at max, and that is pretty sick. And that means that every time I cast a Cyclone, which costs 48 times 4, because I get 400% of the mana cost deal to myself every time I use a Cyclone. And a Cyclone, if I just tap at my feet, costs incredibly fast. As you can see, my HP keeps going down. The other thing that is actually even good about this character is that you need endurance charges. That's the gist of it. But because we used the Skull's Brittle together with Unflinching, it actually have an incredibly good synergy. I have a 20% chance to get an endurance charge when I am hit, and this counts as being hit every time I cast a skill. So when you see me spinning here, you actually see my endurance charges going up. Now it's 4, Sometimes it takes longer than other times because it's 20% and percentages can be very random. But if I just continue like this, there is no way I'm gonna drop these charges. No way in hell. So I'm at 90% plus my resistance goes up crazy. And you can see my blade vortex because I have it on cost from the mistaken. I'll explain that a little later. But that's a really good synergy. I don't have to use them during cry or anything like that. So I just pop and then explode. And then I just keep doing like this. And most of the time it explodes even faster because minions hit me as well. Most enemies I could just stand like this and get hit and it'll explode after like 1 second. And the Molten Shell itself got a ridiculous amount of damage. As you can see, it's actually more now because I have this. I have increased damage per endurance charge. So when this disappears, it's actually gonna lower to just 7,000 instead of 7.7. But what I do to increase this amount of the damage on this is that we have loads of physical damage, well, strength, sorry for that, lots of strength. We combine that with Dune's Synergies, I have no idea how to pronounce that, and this gives us a linked, well, our socketed gems are supported by level 30 Iron Will, which is an insane damage boost, as well as 1% increased damage per 8 strength, which is also quite a bit of damage, and the Skull's Brill add a 97% spell damage on mine. I think it rolls like between 90 or 100 or even 80 or 100. And I managed to get this. It was actually really cheap considering it's that good of a roll. It got the maximum reduced cost speed, I believe, and that's kind of why it lost the value, but I don't care too much about the cost speed because the only thing I cost is the Molten Shell. And it is already on a rather fast cost speed, and I also get some increased cost speed from doing Synergies to counter that. So it's not even that big of a problem. So that's where most of the damage come from, these two. The other thing that I found out that I could do is, well, first and foremost, I can go through the idea I had of Molten Shell. I wanted to make it a little bigger, but I didn't want it to go through to the witch and get the increased arrow effect. But I planned to go amplify, and I might still do it in the future. But what I realized was that as soon as I equipped this and I linked it with increased area of effect that I got, there we go, and I linked it to the Molten Shell, and I found out that it didn't really make that much difference because the Molten Shell is already such a small AoE that increasing it percentage wise didn't even do much. It is such a short spell. So instead of linking that, I linked it to fire penetration because it deals shitload of big boom damage, and fire penetration is always good. It's an easy link for me to have, and then I actually linked it to chance to ignite. I could choose to have increased area of effect, but I didn't feel like it had any big impact, and I could even go consecrated effect, which could argue, yeah, well, you could go either. I choose to go for the chance to ignite, adding a big chance to ignite. It's a 55% right now, and I curse enemies with vulnerability, which is another 13% chance, and I have the Doriani's Invitation that adds a 10% chance to ignite while I'm using a flask, which I do often because I have 2 Quicksilvers that I basically keep up for the clear speed, which I'm gonna explain a little later what I do when I actually clear. So I actually skipped out the increased area of effect, and I don't know if I'm gonna take these. I might just for the 20% increased area of damage, but just taking the amplify. But because I found another way that I am actually gonna make this more AoE clearing speed better, I'm not gonna prioritize amplify. So what I did instead was I grabbed over my Empire's Grasp from my other character, which reverses knockback, and I linked that together with a Cyclone. So the Cyclone I got linked with knockback, blood magic, so it cost as much mana as possible because it costs more mana and it deals more damage with Skull's Brittle, and I don't have to care about any mana regen. The only thing I had that cost mana is my Molten Shell, and I only cast it so often that it doesn't really make, yeah, it doesn't matter. I link it with Fortify to get even more tankier, and Life on Hit just to be even tankier. And with the Ascendancy, I also got the Unyielding to increase my damage, while Fortifies, though, the only thing that I got that increases my damage is really the damage per Endurance charges, which is 6 times 8, and the 30% from the having Fortify up, the 97% from my head, and the Dune's CBR is linked with Iron Will, and the 1% damage per strength. The only thing other than that I got is my necklace. At the moment has a high spell damage, but that doesn't really add too much. It actually adds quite a bit. Now keep in mind, it is actually average damage and not DPS. 7000 DPS is not high at all, but average damage means that it is quite a bit of damage, especially if you add the fact that I have quite a bit of penetration. So I have 34% fire penetration, that's from the fire penetration right here. Then I have flammability, and in the future I plan to go this with elemental weakness as well, because I have dual cursing thanks to the Deodoris damning. I don't have to go dual curses, but I was planning to use determination on these characters first, but when I got enough endurance charges, I realized that I got 90% physical damage reduction without that, so I was like, well, then I don't need that. And there was no other aura that was really, that I thought was good. Anger doesn't do that much because I don't attack fast and stuff like that. And if I used many auras that cost 50%, then I would have 50 plus 35% mana reserve, which would be at 85, which would be reserving quite a bit of mana. I don't cast my Molten Shell too often, but sometimes it's actually quite nice to have quite a bit of mana pool. So this only locks out 70%. And why I have Predictable Weakness I will explain soon. But I plan to sooner or later switch to Elemental Weakness, so I have even 35% to reduce elemental resistances and another 40% of flammability. These might level up. I don't even remember what I have them up here. Yeah, on level 16 at the moment. At least the elemental weakness will level up soon. And I also, as you might have seen before, use elemental equilibrium. The way elemental equilibrium works is that I have my cyclone to deal no fire damage whatsoever. I have no fire damage or anything, but I have the cold damage right there. I think the cold damage is from my ring. Yeah. So I have some cold damage on my ring. It's not the best ring, and preferably I'd like to actually have added cold damage when I've been hit recently. The Ascendancy enhance for the boots, and that's gonna be on every time because I hit myself continuously with Cyclone, so it's gonna be on all the time. That way I could free up so I don't have to have that and I can get a better ring. But this is good for now. So I even reduces the resistances with another 50 thanks to elemental equilibrium. This adds like 50, 40, 35 and 34. That's a shit load of elemental penetration right there. So these most of the time brings their resistances to minus to make them vulnerable to fire. So it's even more than it actually says at most times. And like I said, a big average damage is actually rather big, and it's even bigger when I have like I said, endurance charges add like 700 average damage, and fortify adds at 30%, which should add around 300, 350. Might see later what my full damage is buffed. But that's the general idea of the build. But as I said before, the AoE of Molten Shell is so small, and it became like I can't like go into a big pack, activate Molten Shell, just do a small cyclone, explode, and everything around me dies, because it is simply too small. The only way I could do that is to add a higher chance to ignite and then spread it with the elemental equilibrium, but then I have the penalty of elemental equilibrium, and I am linking my Molten Shell in my 3 link in the Dune's CBR, which would, yeah, you can do the math. It's not gonna be good. The damage would actually be bad. And this character is not meant to be like a super high clear to begin with. It's supposed to be a super tank, but still having some damage, clear, play, be able to play whatsoever is kind of needed. So what I did was, like I said before, I put on these to reverse knockback. I add knockback to my cyclone. As of now, I use projectile weakness because, believe it or not, but projectile weaknesses actually has cursed enemies. Let's see, where is it? There. Hit on cursed enemies have an additional 25% chance to knockback. That is not only with projectiles, that is indeed with everything. So I have that for now. And then I have my cyclone here with a chance to knockback is at 71% at the moment. That is then with an additional 25% thanks to the projectile weakness, which adds it to, what is it, like 96%. So it's rather high, it's almost 100. What I plan to do in the future is take Jewel slots and add these kind of Jewels, chance to knockback on hit, preferably 6%, these can roll 4 to 6%. So I plan to take over here, 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 and maybe if I need, go in here, and maybe even here, depending on how many I need, what percentage I get and everything. And what I want to roll on this is exactly like this: life and chance to knockback, preferably 70% life, I think that's a max, and 6% to knockback. I have a couple of these already made that got out stuff that I can agree with, but the things I really need is the knockback, it's needed, with life, or preferably a chance to ignite. That would also be really good, because the only thing that I can get close by to get a chance to ignite is this, which is not really worth it, or if I go up all the way over here, which could be worth it considering that I actually do quite a bit of damage burning, but it's a couple of points and I'm already 73, and if I remove this, you can see I've not even started on this cluster yet, and going these 2 points is incredibly big, so I almost need to get in here. It's just too good to pass out. So it's a little of a split right now. Going down here will also be good, getting the maximum fire resistance, obviously, to counter out the fire reflect, elemental reflect. I use a ruby flask for that right now to just counter out the reflect, and it doesn't really do that much damage on me. I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I also think that this 8% reduce elemental damage taken while at maximum endurance charges is after your normal resistances. So you resist 75% and then you resist another 8% of what actually goes through. So it's not like you add that straight on. I don't think you add so you get, what is it, 83% elemental resistances, but I think it reduces another 8% of the new damage that you actually are supposed to take. I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I think. So all in all, this character is really tanky. But that's the entire idea of the build. I will show you something in action, but before I do that, I'm actually gonna go through my items real quick, my linkings real quick, and also the gloves here. You can see I have a Vaal Molten shell. Now everyone can kind of already know or can understand, like, Vaal Molten shell together with Skull's brittle is completely ludicrously insane. What Vaal Molten shell does is that you have the molten shell up, and every time you take damage it explodes, dealing damage, but it doesn't disappear. So every time you take any kind of damage you explode. This is incredibly good with Skull's brittle, and if I actually clear fast enough, if I just keep moving, ignore most of the crappy loot and such, I could actually keep this up like almost 100% of the time, and that is insane. The idea of the build is not to need to, because the idea of the build is that I just charge into people and I drag them together so they are all close to me. Sorry, that's my Skype. I'm gonna go ahead and put it on not disturb. There we go. So I just grab in as many as possible, activate my molten shell, and then continue spin until I explode, and everything just dies. Even rare dies like instantly. If they don't die right away, they either burn to death or I have to use one additional one. in Molten Shell. I'm sure that when I actually use Elemental Weakness and everything, they are just gonna die completely, outright. But I do have the Vaal Molten Shell linked with Iron Will, obviously, and increased duration, because the longer it lasts, the more big booms I can have for a longer duration, and Consecrated Effect. This one I don't care for the chance to ignite, because it's very nice to have a chance to only ignite on the normal Molten Shell, because I only explode every so often. So I actually have them like burn to death is really good. But when I actually have Vaal Molten Shell, it just explodes everywhere. It doesn't matter if they burn or not, I just need as much damage as possible. And the actual knockback from the gloves actually helps, meaning that I get additional chance to knockback on the actual explosion of the Molten Shell as well, the Vaal Molten Shell. And I just keep them all together close to me thanks to the Cyclone. So you can say that my AoE clear is based on my movement speed and my Cyclone combined with the chance to knockback, which I plan to get to 100%, because right now I can drop every now and then, which is kind of why I have the Blade Vortex. So I have a Blade Vortex right here with a cost when damage taken and knockback. I also have one in my boot, Blade Vortex, cost when damage taken, knockback, and this I have an increased duration, just to keep it up longer. Now we can see this is on a cost when damage level 1, and this is on a cost when damage level 3. The reason I have two different and on two different levels is that they are on the exact same level and they trigger at the exact same time, they're not gonna trigger. And instead of having 1 and 2, I put it 1 and 3, so it doesn't trigger like back to back, because there is a slight cooldown to this. So you can see if I just continuously spin, you can see now I have 2, and I think I can go like there we go, 2, basically 2 up all the time. I think now when I have 8 endurance charges, it's gonna be up a little longer. But yeah, as you can see, I have at least one extra Blade Vortex, which has an extra, like, what is it there, 64 and 63% based on the level on the knockback, just to help to keep them at me, basically. So, like I said, the mace here, we got the Molten Shell already explained. In my helmet I have the Curse, well, Blasphemy, Flammability, Elemental Weakness, and at the moment Projectile Weakness. When I don't need this anymore, I'm just gonna swap this out and change colors and have a Leaf Slime here. Maybe even add Leaf Slime in the shield or something like that, because when I have 100% chance of knockback, I'm not gonna use the Blade Vortex, I don't think, at least. I might actually have like one Blade Vortex on cost when damage taken with maybe like Culling Strike or something like that to kill something that is on low life, and it will also help because if I kill stuff with, if I attack something with a Molten Shell, they explode and they burn to death, and I have a Blade Vortex with a Culling Strike, they are actually gonna go down thanks to the burning, but it's gonna be the Blade Vortex that actually gets a killing blow. So I could have like a Blade Vortex with increased rarity or something like that. I could. At the moment I don't care about that though, but I could, theoretically. In my shield at the moment, like I said, my Blade Vortex, same with my boots. In my chest piece I already explained my Cyclone, and here I have my Vaal Molten Shell. Sooner or later I am definitely gonna go in and take this to get increased duration, but I think for efficiency wise I need to get the knockback down first. So I think that's my #1 priority, maybe even getting Constitution first, because it's a sickening good HP nod, but we'll have to see. But the items themselves, you can see, are not all that expensive or really anything. These are really bad rolls because, well, I just wanted it, really, but I don't have to have it. I can have like normal yellow belt with lots of HP and strength, and this doesn't even have any HP whatsoever, but it have armor and it have 2 good resistances and the extra chance to ignite and everything. I was like, yeah, I kind of like that idea, so I go with that. And the only thing I really need to have is some kind of elemental damage on either Amulet, Ring, or the enchant of the boots. There are better enchants on the boots, but if I get those enchants on the boots, I actually don't need any other, well, elemental damages on my ring or amulet or anything like that. So that frees up quite a bit. Other than that, just as much armor as possible. Armor. You can see even these got quite a bit of armor. Armor and armor. Yes, loads of armor. This is the idea of the build. So I don't even have any granite flasks or determination or anything like that because I don't need to. But that's gonna be just the introduction to this character, and I'm gonna show you how it's played. So we're gonna take this map right here, more magic monsters with bloodline, and attack, movement speed, and all that jazz. When I enter a map or something like that, I could, if I want to, just stack up my enduring charges. I don't really feel like I need to, and this map is not hard or anything like that. And here you can kind of see why I wanna get 100% chance to knockback, because I lose enemies every now and then. So here you can definitely see how much important it has, because if I had 100% I could just grab this guy like this and just go to the rest of the guys, just keep going until I had big pack, activate Molten Shell, and then boom. But here I actually have to keep booming a little now and then, because otherwise I'm just gonna lose too many. I should also mention that I'm actually running Resolute Technique on this character. While someone might be like, well, that seems useless. Don't you do all your damage with your Molten Shell? Well, yes, the Molten Shell is indeed all my damage, but I need Resolute Technique to add the 100% chance to hit, because if I don't have 100% chance to hit, I can never ever achieve a 100% chance to knock back on hit, ever. Because if I hit them and I knock them back and everything, it's all handy dandy, and I still miss them, then yeah, you can do the math. I don't really go much for the crit anyway, so I don't really care about that. But one thing that is actually really cool with the crit, now when I think about it, is the way it works with a Vaal Molten Shell. If you have a Diamond Flask, well, if you do Vaal Molten Shell builds that actually can crit, definitely get a Diamond Flask. Because if you activate the Diamond Flask before you actually activate your Vaal Molten Shell, you actually roll if the Vaal Molten Shell will crit or not. That means that if it crits, every explosion in Vaal Molten Shell crits. And I'm just gonna activate Vaal Molten Shell right here so you can actually see how it works. Pretty neat. You can see the burning damage. It's quite significant. And that's without any kind of increase burning damage like whatsoever. It's just because it's such a big boom. You can see even the ghost I did half the damage before he joined the yellow. So here we have the boss, we activate Vaal Molten Shell, you can see he just dies with ease. And that's kind of the general idea of this build. The more increased duration I get, which I'm gonna get here, it's gonna help me keep up the Vaal Molten Shell more. The extra knockback is gonna help my general clear speed, and I use mainly the Vaal Molten Shell to bring down bosses, because that's where really this build is slow, since you don't activate your Molten Shell that often, so the actual DPS could be actually considered rather low. You add the burning and everything, so it doesn't take too long, in my opinion. Let's just check. Sweet. I hope you liked the video. I hope you found the build interesting. maybe you want to try it out for yourself or inspire you of some ideas. But that's gonna be me for today, and I will see you guys in the next video.